when I talk about needs in the NVC process, I'm still very much it's still all it's about me somehow. But then when I start going to for the sake of what, it becomes more than me, and somehow it leaves room for things to come through me or with me, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where we need to be poets here. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. That's it. So when you invite more care for yourself, you're inviting care. Remember, the strategy is about, if it's like about myself, but really the quality of care will change your life, not just you, but all around you. You're moving with care. Huh. For the sake of care, for the sake of care of me, for the sake of care of others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the
Right.
getting out of our own way. And that's where this
Mm-hmm.
inquiry of for the sake of what moves us into, which grounds all the work we're doing inside and empowers it. There's you and me and what divides us, our
Mm-hmm. Okay.
differences.
Right.
There's the divides inside of me, that create all this tension that I carry in my life inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you do? Like inside. So it's the same thing, same basics. It's so as in the somatic consensus work, it's the same way you'd work inside yourself as the way you'd work with the divides outside yourself. So what is it? And and the idea of living in the divide, bringing life, shining a light on what on
Mm-hmm.
the divides, that which is really
Mm-hmm.
like what we've been doing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all session today, as always. It's really hard to name because the divides hold both sides. There is
Mm-hmm.
a divide, which is, how we think about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Really, it's all one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do we live? How do we understand the polarity?
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
maybe by just living, going to the place in between and just dancing in it, like this shape shifting practice we do. It's about when it's practiced and embodied, it's about listening to where we're being moved and then opening to that empathic listening between the divides, between us all, through appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that divide, the empathic connecting, which lives in the divide,
Mm-hmm.
we can find out some clarity in moments. It's like what we're doing today by just being in the mystery of the conversation. There's kernels that show up, and that then we move to that's the fire, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's just times we're just going, wow, and that's just space.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
Right.
that does that make sense?
Oh, yes. That was that brought a lot more clarity into what you were trying to, uh, you know,
Hmm.
bring to the group.
Hmm. So let's live in the divide for a moment and let's do the shape shifting practice, okay? It's nice to have those conversations first and then now suss it out by not really thinking about it, but just kind of being in the practice and going, what comes up? Move to ground. Left foot forward. What matters to you? What do you care about? Left foot back, water. All the resources, all those behind you, the ancestors, the ones you want to invite. Oh, yeah. And those who walk beside you, connecting with appreciation. You can imagine this big growing circle. Find appreciation for that. Those who walk beside you, and then the young ones in front of you. Just find your own appreciation. Left foot forward, fire. Appreciating the ground you stand on and all your relationships. Just sit with that, stand with that for a moment as you hold the risk, that the step you want to take in your life. One, this is like a sharpening of a direction. This is a good place to test it out. Feel it. Wind. See where it comes from. Watch it go by. That tension that's in you, see, just let it go by for a minute and take a look at it and notice what it is. Or that struggle you're having, with your family as you were trying to show up more fully. Let all that go by. Take a deep breath in, relax your system, and space. Thank you. Insight. When I was in my mid 40s, I um, in my world where I live, there's a whole thing around initiatory work, coming into our adulthood. And my sons had done that, with this incredible group of men, and they go up on the hill. You go up and you fast for days, like 3 or 4 days, and nights alone on the hill. And there's a lot of preparation for that and ritual. And I decided well, I'm going to do that too. And there was a group of older men who decided to do that too. And so the day before we went up on the hill, the last thing we did before we went up on the hill was we went into a sweat lodge, a Native American sweat lodge. And again, it was it was I don't even want to get into the cultural appropriation thing. It was done with great respect and with permissions. And there was this one of the men who was leading, who's he wrote a book called The Other Within. It's pretty dense, but he has what do you call it? Come on, David. Not cerebral palsy, but what's the disease? Polio. When he was younger, and he was very vital in his day and out. But then when I knew him in his early 60s, he was basically, this was the only part he could move in his head. The rest of his body was just shriveled basically, and he was in a thing that he could use his hands to move him around. Anyway, I'm just trying to draw a picture. This is a guy who had a life. He would be playing drums or guitar and telling stories. He was the most shaman person I've ever met. And he would call himself a shaman, and I give him that. It was without ego. And I learned a lot from him. But at any rate, he went into the sweat lodge with us. And because of his body, we couldn't put hot rocks in it and sweat. It was cold, but we sat in there. And he said to each person in that lodge one thing, before we went up on the hill. And what he said to me in this dark space, quiet just for me, was, David, seeking approval is a form of self-tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the main things I went and sat on the hill for. And so I wanted to share that. It's a good path. Thank you all for walking it together.
Thank you, David.
You too, Jeff.
So this stuff works.
At least temporarily. I guess we got to keep doing it, huh?
In the moment.
Yeah.
There is only now.
There's only now. There's no time.
How many cliches can we get in here in the last minute?
We don't have another hour to unfold that one.